listen up a little bit, thank you.
Karen and David are going to pass out the quiz. Well, yeah.
Hold up.
Ooh.
I didn't prepare for this.
See, this is earthy to me.
Yeah?
Well, we made it in October, November, December. It's like random. It's never been in a barrel. We've had it only been it'll stay in here for a year. Then we run on the other wine. It's nowhere near being ready, but you can see it.
What do you think the rose is like?
Notice the color. Notice how
I said
dark.
light. I felt like it was light.
Yeah, all those whites were light.
Yeah. This is definitely medium.
Guys, again, keep in mind, this is a young wine. It hasn't been bottled yet. It's still developing. He just drew it from the tank to get a feel for different stages of wine and an appreciation for when they get to that point of the bottle as we taste them, how it gets to that, that level. So here we are, pre-bottle. It's fermented, but it's still got to develop a little bit, get the character that we're looking for.
We had a question here about the alcohol content, and the alcohol content is based upon the sugar content. So when we get a wine, a grape in, we start measuring sugar content, because if we have a 26% sugar, we know that's going to give us a 13% alcohol wine, pretty much. If we have a 28% sugar, we're looking at 14% alcohol.
The sugar is higher with the yellow.
It depends on the grape. If the grape is, now the problem is, if you have a high sugar content grape, say 28%, 30%, not uncommon in California, and you start to ferment that, what happens is the yeast that you introduce into the must and the fermentation begins, the yeast can only tolerate a certain amount of alcohol. So the fermentation progresses, and the sugar content's coming down and the alcohol content is going up, because fermentation, as you know, sugar is converted into alcohol with the byproduct is CO2. At the alcohol content of the must, we call the skins and the juice in the tank there the must before we convert it into wine. The alcohol content starts to get higher and higher because we have a very high sugar content. When the alcohol content gets up to 14, 15% sugar in some yeasts, it kills the fermentation. It kills the yeast because there's too much alcohol that it just created. And it stops the fermentation. And then we have a catastrophe, because that's called a stuck fermentation. We're down to 3% sugar, and the wine is not fermented completely. And 3% sugar in a wine is terrible, because it tastes like Coca-Cola. It's very sweet. It's terrible. And you can't get that out because the thing is stopped. There are ways we can do that, but the way we combat that is when we have a high sugar content grape, we test it when we have it in the tank and we add water to it so that the sugar content is reduced to around 26%, no more than 26%. We're adding water to it. We have to add acidified water because we're changing also the acidity when we're adding water. And the balance between acidity and sugar is what makes the wine so perfect and makes the wine so good. We water back the must to bring it down to a level that the yeast can handle, and then we start the fermentation, and we don't have a stuck fermentation. You see, God designed grape to make wine with. There's no other fruit on the planet that has the balance between sugar and acidity that the grape does. It's absolutely perfect.
Divine intervention.
Now, can we make grapes,
why
wine
he's
from
a heck of a guy,
pineapples
man.
and
Heck of a
tomatoes
guy.
and like all these guys do? Sure, you can. But you have to add a great deal more acid, a great deal more sugar. But the grape comes to us in the manner in which God intended it. Not to be eaten at the table, but to make wine. God gave us
So
the
not for
grape
grape Kool-Aid,
to
huh?
make wine.
No.
I believe that.
So here's a good point, you guys have had Merlot, right? You've all tried it. Now, what, in your opinion, what would be the level of tannin right now in this wine?
High. Medium.
Tannin being that drying sensation?
Oh, hi.
Feeling
Yeah.
frothy?
High.
Medium low?
I think it's like medium.
There's not a lot of tannin right now, right?
So it's gotta develop.
My teeth
So,
are really dry.
what happens now, right? What happens if you want to, you intend to raise the tannin level, or it stays the way it is before it gets bottled?
The level stays the same, it just gets softer. You see, it's all about mouthfeel. Wine is about mouthfeel. It's the softness that makes the wine good. And that brings us to a topic of malolactic fermentation, which you guys should really understand about, because most red wines have to undergo a malolactic fermentation. This wine went through a normal fermentation with yeast, converting all the sugar into alcohol and giving off CO2. That's called the primary fermentation. And that's finished, and there's no more sugar, and the wine's not sweet anymore. And now it's become wine. However, there's three basic acids in a red wine: malic acid, tartaric acid, and citric acid. The acid that gives red wine its bitter, lousy taste is malic acid. So they want to get the malic acid out. And they've developed a bacterial culture that will change malic acid into lactic acid. And it's called a malolactic bacteria. And we introduce that into the wine, a red wine, when the primary fermentation is finished. And it's kind of a slow process, and it's not very discernible. You can't really see it, and there's very little gas given off. But over a period of about 8 or 9 or 10 weeks, all the malic acid in the wine is converted into lactic acid. Lactic acid, as you know, is the acid that's in milk, and it's soft. It has a soft mouthfeel. And by removing the malic acid and converting it into lactic acid, we take the red wines and give them this beautiful, soft, smooth mouthfeel. And that's the story about malolactic fermentation.
Got it.
And all
Got it all.
decent red wines
know.
are subjected to
Got
that
it.
fermentation. No wines that are made anywhere in the world that don't undergo that. That's half, that's 375. That's a 375. The others are 750. So that's the California Merlot.
What makes your wine different
Well, first of all, I'm here. And as soon as I appear on the scene, then we're totally covered.
Okay. That's a good
We like to
answer.
think that we make the best red wines in the state. Some of our Chilean reds that we've made are absolutely spectacular.
Chilean red, so maybe that's one to
that
buy.
bistro that we have upstairs there. It's wall-to-wall people who go every Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. I was there Saturday with my wife. The food is wonderful. I had a Chilean Reserve Syrah from 2011. Nobody has a bistro like that. And our Chardonnay, our 2010 Estate Chardonnay that we do here, is as good as any Chardonnay.
If you suggest an inexpensive bottle that you guys sell, what would it be?
The best wine in the place here is a Chilean Syrah Reserve, $36. Now, that's a little pricey, but in a restaurant, we get the same price in the restaurant. And you know, we get the champagne is $23.
That was water.
$43 for that champagne.
Oh,
This port is $19.95.
Wow.
Wait till you taste this. This is a golden Chardonnay
oh,
we
okay.
made, and it's sweet.
You know, I'm balling on a budget.
Hey.